Imagine going one full year without ever seeing your own face. No mirrors anywhere in your home, no phone camera flipped around to check how you look, no shop window catching your reflection as you walk past on the street, no still puddle after rain, no dark window at night, nothing that bounces your own image back at you. Nothing at all. You'd still know what you look like, obviously. You've seen your face thousands of times across your life. It's not exactly a mystery to you. Except that's not quite how it works. Something strange starts happening to their sense of their own face. And by the end of this video, you're going to look at your own reflection completely differently than you do right now. Let's start with where this pattern keeps showing up again and again in completely unrelated groups of people. Polar expedition researchers have documented it for over a century. Crews wintering over in Antarctic research stations, sometimes for 6 to 9 months at a stretch, through weeks with no natural sunlight at all, with limited access to mirrors beyond a small shared shaving glass, have reported a recurring, almost universal reaction the first time they saw a full reflection again after the isolation period finally ended.
They didn't recognize themselves. Not in a poetic, I've changed so much kind of way. In a literal double take, who is that person kind of way, for a full second or two before recognition finally caught up and clicked back into place. Submarine crews have independently reported the same exact reaction. Months underwater, entirely artificial light, minimal mirror access beyond one small shaving mirror bolted above a shared sink. Sailors coming off long deployments describing a genuine startle reflex at their own reflection, as if a complete stranger had just stepped into the room with them. This pattern isn't confined to extreme, unusual environments either. Prisoner of war accounts from multiple 20th century conflicts describe something remarkably similar: years without access to a single mirror, and then a moment of genuine shock at the first reflection afterward. Several accounts describe not just noticing obvious physical change, like weight loss or a new beard, but a stranger, harder to articulate sense that the face looking back at them wasn't quite the one they'd been expecting to see, even fully accounting for those visible changes. So here's the question that actually matters. Why would this happen at all? You know your own face. You built that knowledge slowly, over decades, through thousands of repeated glances. Why would a few months without a mirror be enough to unravel something that well established?
The obvious answer is that it doesn't unravel anything at all. It's simply about physical change. You lose weight, you grow a beard, your skin tone shifts from too much sun or too little of it. So of course you look at least somewhat different when you finally see yourself again. That's genuinely part of it, but it's not the whole story. And researchers studying self-recognition directly have found something more interesting sitting underneath that surface-level explanation. Psychologist Gordon Gallup's foundational work on self-recognition, originally conducted with primates back in the 1970s, later extended into decades of child development research, established something that sounds obvious on the surface, but genuinely isn't. Recognizing your own reflection is not automatic. It's a learned, actively maintained skill, not a fixed, built-in capability. Chimpanzees exposed to mirrors for the very first time initially react to their own reflection as if it were an entirely separate animal, before, in many documented cases, eventually working out that the animal in the glass is them.
Human infants go through a strikingly similar developmental process. A toddler doesn't recognize themselves in a mirror by default from birth. That recognition develops gradually, and it's typically identified through the classic mark test, placing a small, visible spot of rouge on a sleeping child's face and then watching whether they reach toward their own face rather than toward the mirror itself once they spot the mark. Most children don't pass this test reliably until somewhere around 18 months to 2 years of age. Here's the pivot, and it's the part that reframes everything that came before it. If self-recognition genuinely has to be learned from scratch, that also means it has to be actively maintained afterward, indefinitely. Your brain isn't storing one fixed, permanent image of your face, the way a photograph, once developed, would be. Instead, it's holding a constantly working model,
a mental self-image that gets quietly checked and updated every single time you glance at any reflection at all. Take away the checking mechanism entirely, and that model doesn't simply freeze in place, preserved exactly as it was. It starts, slowly and invisibly, to drift. Without regular reflective feedback correcting it, your internal sense of your own face gradually becomes something closer to a memory than an active perception. And memory, unlike a mirror, has never been very good at holding a face perfectly steady over time. It softens sharp edges, it shifts subtle proportions. Sometimes it idealizes, sometimes it distorts in ways you'd never consciously notice happening. Which is exactly what polar researchers, submariners, and long-term isolates keep independently, repeatedly reporting. Not simply noticing physical change, but a genuine mismatch between the face preserved in memory and the actual face looking back at them. Now, for the darker end of this pattern. A clinical case reports on individuals living through extreme, prolonged isolation, including some documented instances tied to long-term solitary confinement, describes something that goes beyond simple unfamiliarity or mild surprise. In a smaller number of severe, well-documented cases, individuals reported a fleeting but entirely genuine sense of dissociation when they were confronted with a mirror again for the first time. A brief but real inability to feel that the reflection in front of them was actually them, even while knowing, intellectually, with total certainty, that it had to be. Clinicians examining these accounts have connected them to a broader recognized category of depersonalization, a temporary disruption in the felt, embodied sense of owning one's own body and identity. That's a significant leap from simply thinking, I look different than I remembered. It represents the self-recognition system itself briefly, temporarily failing to close the loop between the reflection in the glass and the felt sense of identity behind it. Which means the mirror was never really just a grooming tool or a vanity object, the way we tend to casually think of it. It's been functioning, quietly and constantly, as an identity maintenance system running in the background of your entire life. One you've never once consciously noticed was even running, because it never once stopped. So here's the part that should actually get to you. You are, right at this very moment, walking around with a mental image of your own face that you fully believe is accurate, current, and essentially fixed. It isn't fixed at all. It's a working draft, silently revised every single time you catch your reflection in a passing window or glance at a recent photo. Kept in sync with reality only because you keep feeding it fresh data, constantly, without ever consciously realizing that's the exact thing you're doing. Stop feeding it. Take away the mirrors, the cameras, every piece of reflective glass, and that draft doesn't stay frozen in place, faithfully preserving some permanent truth about your face. It starts to drift, quietly and steadily, the exact same way any unchecked prediction drifts once nothing is left correcting it against reality. The person stepping in front of a mirror again after months without one isn't meeting a total stranger. Not really. They're meeting the gap that opened up between who they actually are and who their own mind quietly, invisibly decided they'd become in the silence, one uncorrected day at a time. And that gap is already open right now, for you too. You've just never gone long enough without checking to notice it forming.